What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Movies about movies. Now playing Tropic Thunder, The Artist, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I'm a lead farmer, motherfucker. Welcome to Corona Cinema. I'm Liam Way, and I'm joined as always by May,
Good afternoon.
Ross,
Hello there.
and Mason.
You alright?
And we're going to start with Tropic Thunder from 2008. Through a series of freak occurrences, a group of actors shooting a big budget war movie are forced to become the soldiers they are portraying. Directed by Ben Stiller, who co-wrote the screenplay with Ethan Coen and Justin Theroux. Starring Stiller, Robert Downey Jr., Jack Black, Brandon T. Austin, Steve Coogan, Tom Cruise, and lots more funny, talented people. And it was nominated at the Oscars for Robert Downey Jr., who's nominated for Best Supporting Actor. It's a rare thing for a comedy. But yeah, whoever picked this, you can talk about this film, Ryan, because you picked it, so you can talk about it, okay?
So I picked this film, and I really only picked it because it was the only film I knew that was about another film. But then again, I love this. This film's very strange because it is literally the perfect film to stand on the line between being shit and being funny, which just makes it stupid. And I feel like the cast itself is nice because it's like every single person you know from being in several other things. So it's just nice watching them all act in like a comedy respect. And also, this film for them was probably very, very fun to make. And you go through each character and each of them like adds something to the film. I think the main reason I like this film was just because of Tom Cruise. Like, he only has like maybe 11 minutes of screen time in this, but he's easily like my favorite character, my favorite Tom Cruise performance, just because it's just so different to anything he's ever done. And when he requested the role, he requested that he had big, fat, like prosthetic hands. So he's wearing like giant, like rubber gloves, pretty much, that then made really, really hairy. And he's given like a fat suit and bald head, and is just the like personified just aggression and testosterone that you kind of like think could be like an agency behind like film marketing and behind like organizing actors. And then literally like at every turn, each actor adds something to like Matthew McConaughey's acting as well. The fact that he just misunderstands every time and he just thinks someone's trying to steal trying to steal Ben Stiller from him, and all he cares about is TiVo, and him just turning up at the end and then throwing like the I don't know what TiVo is, but he throws it and stops an RPG with it. I just enjoy all these like little quirks that each of the characters have. Like even Jack Black, I think too much of himself can be annoying, but because everything's balanced really well in this film. And Ben Stiller in this, I think he direct this film as well? I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, he did. And the fact that, he directed and acted in this film and still managed to be somehow, it still just makes you laugh, even though it's stupid. You don't mind it being stupid. It's just it's a nice break from a lot of the serious films we usually watch. And I like the fact how like Ben Stiller gets like a lot of respect for the fact that even though this is just like a comedy movie, so even though this is like a comedy movie, Ben Stiller like takes time to actually get in like very, very decent shape for this film. Seeing like he doesn't really have like lazy days, even though he knows this film's not meant to be taken too seriously. He still like puts in all the like the effort that he would for a big time film. It's probably one of the best shapes that he got into for any film. Considering, I mean, it's just the amount of effort he put in because it's his film, more or less. And yeah, I think even like Nick Nolte as well, you wouldn't expect him to be in this film, considering he's usually a bit more of a serious actor, meaning things like Warrior and other such films. So it's nice to see him act in a comedy respect as well, considering he's done a lot of the things that he wanted to do with his career. And Steve Coogan as well, like him getting punched in the face, and just this film is just filled full of like nice, like even Tobey Maguire being put in this film, but not properly. It's just strange and funny. And Robert Downey Jr. using blackface, but using like him being an American actor, playing an Australian actor who is playing an African American Vietnamese, like not Vietnamese, like a Vietnam veteran playing a rice farmer, and it's just like how many levels he adds to that performance, and then everything he says is like utter garbage, but just brilliant to watch. And yeah, it's just a nice, lighter-hearted film. It kind of makes fun of itself, and I like that about a film.
This is the most enjoyable time I had watched. It's the third time I watched it, and like the kind of the satire of it like just hit differently this time. I don't know why I didn't enjoy it as much. I still enjoyed it. I still liked both times I watched it before, but this time it's like everything just kind of clicked together, like showing the ridiculousness and like the self-importance of people who work on these kind of movies. Like when you go to make a war movie, and like the way they do it, the directors and the actors, they feel like this is like it's more important than the war. It's like it's got to be authentic. It's got to be this massive deal. I kind of highlighted that in this silly satirical way. Just really works for me. I thought this time the war didn't even have like Nick Nolte was even telling the truth about what happened to him, which makes it even funnier. So it's even more stupid what's happening. And other things like the fake trailers to kick off the film, just perfect to get you in. I was all in on those. Even just it just those type of things, those type of movies that get released, like the Fatties 2, over the shitty sequel. The first film was already shit already, and now they're making it into a franchise of just crap humor. I just kind of it just sums up where movies can be, what movies can be like in this world. So I thought it just executed that perfectly. Ross, did you find the satirical elements of this film to be satisfying on this watch?
Yeah, I really liked the humor in it. As you said, like the fatties thing, it's obviously kind of like at first I just thought it was like a piss take out of the Nutty Professor and like kind of that kind of thing, which because there's that scene with them all fighting at the dinner table. Yeah, and but I really like. I think the dynamics between the characters works really well, and that makes it funnier as well, because they're all kind of cliched within their own way, like a different kind of cliched actor. I think the funniest one is Jack Black, like coming off drugs, and the way he's reacting to that is hilarious. And then I can't remember his name, but the one who's kind of like a new upcoming actor, he's done like all the scripts and knows everything. Then just each character has their own kind of cliched actor type, and it works together really well. And obviously, there's a lot of like stupid humor in here, which is funny, and I find that really funny. So yeah, even if it is like the fart thing, it is still funny. And it's very much taking the piss out of a lot of other actors and films that go on within Hollywood, and it knows what it's doing, and I think that's why it works so well.
I like how it's kind of depicting a troubled Hollywood production as well within this, like you hear the stories of like Apocalypse Now and stuff like that, where like the money is like it's going out of control. They can't afford to do this scene. They mess up, like they try to do an explosion, they mess it up. They don't get the camera's not running, stuff like that. Like the costs are going out of control. You can't control these like egotistical actors. You got Tom Cruise, the studio head, who's like demanding all kind of stuff from you. The way they kind of showed that and kind of made that in a more, they exaggerated a bit obviously, but showing how these big Hollywood blockbusters can spiral out of control. I thought that was like another interesting part of it. Mason, was that something that you found to be enjoyable, showing how these massive films could kind of go out of control, all the different factors that go into making it feel like this, with the actors, the studio heads, the grand visual effects, all that stuff. Do you find that interesting?
Yeah, I think out of all three of the films this week, this one actually does show the most of kind of what goes into actually making a film, whereas the others kind of only show you like half of the process, but this one does literally show you like pretty much, to me, like all aspects of what goes into making a film. And it, like you said, I feel like it exaggerates it a bit, but I can't see it being too far from the truth. Like you said, all these films, they just spiral out of control. I can see it being pretty similar to what we see in Tropic Thunder. And that's probably like my favorite part of the film, is like that depiction that it gives, because other than that, I don't know, I feel like you three really rate the film, but I didn't really enjoy it like at all. I think this is the second time that I've watched it, and I don't know, I just couldn't connect with it. Like I think like the concept is there, and it is funny, like it has the recipe to be funny, but it didn't land at all for me. At least you finished the film and I was like, okay, good, I won't be watching that again. Like I don't know, it's just really strange to me, because it has like the same humor, I feel like, as like Dodgeball, But wait, yeah, Dodgeball. But it's not the same. It doesn't hit as that film does for me, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like I need to hear more from you guys as to why you love this film so much. Because for me, like I won't be rewatching it.
Stuff I don't like about it, like, I think the setup, and maybe probably like the first 45 minutes is like, this is what usually happens with comedies. I find like comedies are always better. The first half is always better. It's harder to like land a comedy. I feel like I watched Hangover again last night, and that's one of the few comedies where like they actually end with some of the funniest bits, and you walk out like, yeah, that was a right laugh. Whereas a lot of the time comedies are harder to get right in the second half, and I think that happens here. Like, I feel when Ben Stiller kind of goes off on his own, that's when it drags a bit for me. I still like good scenes, like when he's tied to the chair, and he still thinks he's like in a scene. He's doing it with the guy who's like trying to torture him. Like, he's like, oh, sorry, man, I didn't mean to do that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's still good scenes like that, but like the kid leader, he's a bit shit. Like, I don't really find him too funny, and that their love for Simple Jack just doesn't all that stuff doesn't really connect with me. And then it's too long. Like, it gets to nearly 2 hours by that point. That's kind of the stuff I don't like, but it's the overall vibe of the film and the satire is what makes me enjoy it so much. Mate, did you have any flaws that you could pick out within the film?
I'm not sure, because I think any real flaw with the film, it doesn't really matter because it's not trying to be the best film ever. Like, it's, even though it's a relatively big film with a decent amount, like a decent budget, a decent cast, like it's making fun of itself all the time. So it doesn't really matter if there's like flaws with it. Like, I don't like Simple Jack, but you're not meant to like Simple Jack. If that makes any sense. Like, it's meant to be like too on the nose with everything. It's meant to like annoy people, and if it doesn't annoy you, then you're gonna find it funny. So either way, it wins because it either gets the publicity at once or it's funny. Yeah, I don't think I'd really change anything about the film because I think I just like the energy of it, the energy of like how chaotic it is all the time. Like, then when they're trying to organize the filming of the first scene, it just goes completely wrong. That's what I like about the film, because it just makes it look like a nightmare to try and organize this many people who are this hard to like manage, and have this many like egos in one room. So I don't really dislike anything about the film. Granted, it's not like, I'm not going to rate it particularly highly, but I still really enjoy the film, and I wouldn't really change anything about it. Like, it's just funny. Like, I don't know. I'd want it to be a bit funnier, but I can't really, like, you can't really add in your own jokes to make it funny because it's already as funny as it can be usually, if that makes any sense. I think the characters are perfectly selected. And the casting's good.
The thing about Simple Jack is that was the thing that attracted like the most controversy, like the most criticism in this film, was from like disabled rights groups and stuff over the portrayal of Simple Jack. But like, I guess it's offensive just by him doing it and putting that onto screen and making disabled people look like that. But obviously that's not the point of it. The point is to show like how dumb, like when actors, it's like taking the piss out of actors who portray disabled people in films and the lengths they go to, like the method acting ways they go to portray these people, like whether it's like he says, like Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump, Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man. But like, I can't really argue with people who are disabled who were offended by it, because maybe just even though that's not the point of what he's doing on screen, just the fact that he is doing that on screen could upset you, I guess, if you're a disabled person, you're seeing that and you think if people don't get the message, they'll just see that and think, oh, that's what disabled people are like, I guess, or mentally handicapped people are like. But I thought as like a piece of commentary on what actors do, I thought it was pretty well done. Like, the most egregious example is where he says, "I am Sam," with Sean Penn. I haven't seen that film. I've seen clips from it though, when he's just straight up going, like you say, going full retard, as Thing says, Robert Downey Jr. says, and that's like a legit, like, insightful observation. I thought, like, you never go full retard. So yeah, like Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump, he's got a bit of intelligence. He's a war hero, all that kind of stuff. Dustin Hoffman, he's a smart guy. Whereas just by the few clips I've seen and the reputation that has, it seems like in I Am Sam, he's just he's just got nothing going for him. It's just Sean Penn, a rich, wealthy, smart actor, just dumbing himself down completely with no kind of redeeming elements to his character. I thought that was like a legit, like, insightful piece of commentary there in that way. But Ross, is that something you thought that maybe 12 years on or 13 years on, actually, that was like something that's not aged well, like the kind of portrayal of the disabled character, even though it's not meant to be, even though Ben Stiller's not trying to make fun of them, it could be perceived that way. So perhaps it's not like the best part of that film.
I think, yeah, as you say, you could say it for this example with using the word retard and going full retard, and the use of blackface as well. It's all kind of like 13 years ago, you could kind of get away with that a bit more than you could now. I mean, not that it's right. It's just that's just the way it was kind of back then. And I think, yeah, as you say, Ben Stiller said himself that it wasn't there to make fun of handicapped people. They were trying to make fun of actors who use that for acclaim, and it's all there to kind of show that a studio, an actor, will do anything for the money, and that's kind of what the film in general is all about. That's kind of the underlying message from the whole film. As I say, I feel like we should touch on like the use of blackface as well. It's not right. It shouldn't be there. But 13 years ago, they could get away with that, I think. But obviously, if this film was made in 2021, that would not be happening at all. But it's all kind of there not to take the piss out of people. It's there to show how actors and stuff kind of lose sight of what they're doing, will go kind of too far to make money and whatnot, and do a role. It's kind of to show that it's not there to offend anyone or make fun of anyone. I think, yeah, I think if this film was made in the last 5 years, I don't think it would have been passed by a studio or whatever. I don't think it would have been in there in the first place. But yeah, it was kind of more acceptable 13 years ago in the eyes of the media than it is now. And I think that's kind of how it is.
Aside from his blackface and all that stuff, I do like how they comment on it. Like you have what's his name? Can't remember the black guy. I've said his name already. Austin, something Austin. The black guy in the film. When he comments to Robert Downey Jr., like when he like kind of makes fun of the voice that he's putting on. It's like, yeah, this is how we talk, all that kind of stuff. Like he confronts him about it. So it's important to get that in there at least. And I do like the way Kirk Lazarus, the name of Downey Jr.'s character in the film, the way he like describes his craft in the most like abstract, complicated terms. Like I can't even think of an example of a quote that he says. It's like you're trying to demonstrate the configuration of trying to describe this is how like the kind of how the way actors can be up their own asses about what they're doing. Like it's not actually that important. It's really funny how they kind of show that. And I also like how you have Ben Stiller's character, like his like career crisis, and how it shows like how you kind of evolve as like a movie star, like the trajectory you can go on. It's like you're a big star, dude. All these 6 sequels to what that Scorcher film or whatever it was. And then like, you kind of fall off a bit. You do like a bad buddy cop movie. I think that's what he did in the film. And then you desperately try to recover your reputation by he does the Simple Jack role. That's hard, dramatic, method acting role to try and repair the damage of his career. So I thought that was like another interesting thing to have in there about how like you try to keep your status, I guess, as an actor, be in the public eye, depending on what roles you're doing stuff. But yeah, it was another interesting part. Also, like the name of the black guy is Al Pacino, the name of the rapper, as like an extension. Like I know, like rapper, like Scarface is like a big thing in like hip hop culture. So to have that as like an extension of that, to have Al Pacino as the name of him, I thought that was another funny detail.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what you said and what Ross was saying. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what you were saying, what Ross was saying about like certain aspects of the film, like using blackface or pretending to be like someone with learning difficulties for a film looks bad. It looks like this film is just doing the exact same thing to be funny. But I think that's when you take it out of context, that the fact it is they're more pointing at the actors saying this is what actors do. That's like a nice distinction to make, I think. Because when I watched this film today, some of my flatmates were saying, well, he's just using blackface. It's like, well, no, the character's using blackface to show that it's just like how like ridiculous it is. And And that's kind of the way you need to look at it. If you just see clips from it and you don't realize that it's a film about a film, then that can be lost, and then the film can come under scrutiny. So if this film does come under scrutiny, I think it's just because people don't necessarily understand, or they just want to stir a little bit, which makes sense.
Okay, let's get some ratings. Start with Matty.
As enjoyable as this film is, I don't think it's like one of the highest films out there, like in terms of like, I don't know, being put together, and I don't think it should be held on the same level as everything else we watched, because I don't know, it sounds a bit harsh, but I'd probably just give it maybe a 7.3. Like, I enjoy it, but I understand why people just find it kind of ridiculous.
Mason.
I give it a 6.8.
Ross.
I think this film's actually got quite a good message behind it, and it does very well at making fun of actors, studios, Hollywoods in general, and I think it's actually quite smart in that sense, whilst also being funny above that. So I'll go with a 7.8.
I'll go with a 7.7. Moving on to The Artist from 2011. An egomaniacal film star develops a relationship with a young dancer against the backdrop of Hollywood's silent era. Written and directed by Michelle Hazanavicius. Starring Jean Dujardin, Berenice Bejo, James Cromwell, Penelope Ann Miller, Andrew Goodman, and quite a number of other people. Nominated for 10 Oscars, winning 5, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor for Dujardin. Whoever picked this, go ahead.
Yeah, so I picked this because I think it's a film that I've been avoiding for so long, because a lot of people just argue that it didn't deserve to win the Oscar, and a lot of people say it's boring. So I was like reluctant to actually watch it. But after watching it the other day, I actually did quite enjoy the film. I think like the concept of it is quite strong, and I think the main like success of the film really is just showing that in like a 21st century film, how much emotion and like performance you can actually give through having no audio. And this film, I think it does it well. Like, there's a lot of films nowadays when they are released in black and white, it does seem a bit strange for the time, but I can see the reason behind the artistry and stuff like that. But for this, going like that step further and having no sound as well, I think it just works really well. I think like the score and the music in the background is great in this film. It does its job at emphasizing a lot of the scenes to push further the emotion that is trying to be shown by the actors, and I think it really highlights, like I said, I guess as well, how important sound is in sort of elevating scenes that if it wasn't there, or if it was done not in like the best manner, or with sort of, I guess, worse music, how it can kind of fall flat. But yeah, this film just does something really well for me in that sense. I think one main criticism with the film is that it only really appeals to a small audience. I could never really imagine myself going to see this in cinema now, because I think I'd probably find it boring. And I think only people kind of like us, and who, if you're really into film and you, I guess if you're like really into film and you want to kind of watch like the Oscar nominated style films, you would seek to go watch this. But there's no way that no one would like turn over the channels and be like, yeah, let's put this on, because it is, I guess in that sense, it is a bit of a hard watch. Like, it's not the most accessible of films. And I don't think it's really rewatchable. Like, after this viewing of it, I've experienced it, and I think that's enough. But saying that, the one experience I have had with it, I enjoyed it a lot more than what I was actually expecting to.
Yeah, I was expecting like a technical masterpiece, like a celebration of like a romantic time in like Hollywood movie history, and then also kind of things like we're talking about, like feeling the self-importance within like the movie industry with Tropic Thunder. It's obviously in a different way, but I also expected that kind of tone as well. Like, yeah, this is an important film. We're celebrating the silent era. It's going to be really important. And I agree with you. Like, listening to just good music put together for 90 minutes, just like cool. Like, I can kind of vibe with that. And I guess it's nice to present like an enhanced version of a silent film. Like, I watched a silent film today from 1922. So, and I guess like being able to do a silent film, but have like better picture, better cinematography, and like crisper sound is like a good way to honor it, I guess, because like silent films were like a very specific kind of vibe, and being able to do it with like the enhanced technology we have now, so you can do it in a more better way. I guess that's a nice tribute to it. But then at the same time, it's like, is it really worth? Like silent films have their own charm, specifically because they existed in that era. So is it really worth doing a silent film in the 21st century? I don't really know. Matty, have you got any thoughts on that? I'm guessing it's the first silent film you've seen. How was it?
The first silent film I've seen, obviously apart from like little skits. And when they said it, I thought it was about a silent film, which I suppose it is, but I didn't realize the film itself was silent. So I was expecting at some point it would make like one of those transitions like it does like Oz the Great and Powerful, where they just like, it starts off small and then it would change to a wide angle and then introduce the sound. So I was hoping it would do that at some point, which is a little bit annoying when it slowly reintroduced sound when he dropped. So he put the glass down, then he dropped this, and then he went outside, heard the laugh, and he woke up. It was a dream. I was expecting at some point the sound would come back again, but then I had to sit there for another like an hour and 10 minutes with no sound, which is okay. But I probably rather wish they just committed to there being no sound, because that made me think that there would be sound at some point other than right at the end. I'm not gonna lie, I do struggle a little bit with this kind of like, I like how much they can get across from just when someone is talking without any sound, like just from body language. Especially I prefer the more subtle body language that they use, rather than like the overt, like bombastic, like overacting, which they kind of said was what was wrong with silent cinema in the first place. Like with James Cromwell as well, I really liked him, the way he spoke and the way he acted, him being the butler kind of dude and the driver, because I think that form of soft silent cinema worked a lot better. The only problem, I think the music was nice and it built nicely, especially towards the end. It just came a bit monotonous because it was all kind of the same kind of light, kind of jovial noise to the film. And I think that, not broken up by having not really much silence apart from that kind of like 2 or 3 minute bit where the sound is introduced, kind of not got on my nerves. I'm not sure, but I didn't quite help the flow for me. But there were certain parts of it, even where nothing was said, put across messages quite strongly, where he said, "I've made way for you," to the girl when she starts disrespecting all of silent cinema and the way they act, saying that she's going to be the new best thing with sound and everything. And he's just like, well, if I didn't do what I did, you wouldn't have what you've got now. And I think that for me was probably the most resonating thing for the film, that you can say silent film, like I don't like it, but I can't really say it doesn't have a place, because it does, because silent film gave birth to the audio parts of cinema, is the same as black and white gave birth to the Technicolor, which gave birth to widescreens, to everything. So it's really important for the part of history, and this film is more like a throwback, a tribute to the origins of the first time cinema became what we know today. And that's what I do like about this film. You can't really say it's not important, because it is. And I really enjoyed the way they made the film as well. I'm guessing they kept to pretty much the way that all the old methods of making films that they used back in the 20s and before. And I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the way they do the street views, the way they do like the pan outs, and it's kind of like tall sets. And I'm wondering if they put them together digitally, or do they actually use old methods, because it does work really well. And I do like that. And I like trying to see how they put films together. It's done really, really seamlessly. And it kind of gives me, I'm not sure, I just like the way they've done it. And the film did relatively well for something I've never heard of. And as Mason says, it doesn't appeal to a huge amount of audiences. To turn 15 million into like 130 million is quite a decent turnout at the box office for a film that really isn't going to be that popular with a lot of people. Like, I like film more than most people, and I don't really like this film. So this is going to, maybe it's with the older generation that it really does resonate with. And And at the end as well, the end of the film kind of gave me like strong vibes of The Apartment, where you think he's gonna kill himself, and then there's like a bang, you go in. And same in The Apartment. I'm not gonna ruin that. I've just basically ruined that film for everyone. Don't worry about it. It's in the '60s anyway. And you go in and he's just like popped a champagne bottle. But those kind of it felt heavily influenced by those films, but I suppose because it's not trying to do anything new, it's slightly trying to do something new, but it's a throwback film. And yeah, I like the costume, the cinematography, everything there is perfect. The acting's well done. I think, I just slightly misunderstood certain bits of the film, or was led in a little bit of a wrong direction, but I can't fault the film for that. And I think it does have a place in cinema.
Yeah, I imagine it did that well at the box office for like the novelty of the experience of seeing a silent, because I don't know how many, definitely like widespread, they're not showing silent films all the time. Like obviously like little independent cinemas, they probably show old films there, but having like a newly produced silent film is probably, you could sell that as a bit of an event, not like a Infinity War or anything, but as a bit of an event, like taking over 100 mil, that's pretty impressive. And it was always, that's the thing as well, it was always going to win Best Picture. There was just no way a film like this, which celebrates old Hollywood, there was just no way it was not going to win Best Picture. It took like and sweep the Oscars basically. But it's funny you brought up that like dream sequence where you have like a bit of sound. When I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be like a high concept film. So I didn't know exactly what it was about. I just knew it was about silent film. It's going to be like a high concept film where like the world is actually a silent movie. Like the world he actually lives in the film is silent, and you just communicate with these like text boards or whatever. I thought, so as I was watching, it's like, oh my days, is that what it's going to be like? That's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of like impressive, but also a bit cringy as well, because it'd be like, yeah, he started like hearing sounds, but he couldn't speak. And it's like him coming out of the silent era into the talkies and like discovering his voice, that kind of thing. I thought that's might what it'd be for the few minutes that dream sequence lasted. And I think, yeah, I guess having like two scenes, obviously you have that scene and then you have the bit at the end where you've got the sound where he speaks and you realize that he's a French guy. I think that, I guess it's like, that kind of like accentuates the sound a bit more to have it silent throughout, and then you have those two scenes with the sound. But like it didn't really hit like carry any weight with me. I feel like they wanted that to hit a bit more, like having, after being a silent film for throughout, to have that ending, you wanted to feel like, oh my god, here's the sound, and it would kind of feel like this grand moment within the film. I didn't really get that vibe, so I guess that was kind of that's one bit where it failed for me. And I also think it didn't help that I watched Singing in the Rain again last week, and that's like unmatched in terms of films about the transition from the silent era into the talkies. Like nothing will ever beat Singing in the Rain. That's just like it's an incredible film. And this kind of just becomes like a man who loses his job, essentially loses his like place within the industry, and then it's just kind of like him just suffering for years. Like it was dragging a bit after his like come down. I thought it was like dragging a bit without much kind of dramatic heft, I guess. Like kind of just him spiraling out of control, losing his fame, losing his status within the industry. It kind of dragged for me. It wasn't a really compelling story. I thought it was still like beautiful to watch and the music was great. As like a story in that period, it wasn't too compelling, I thought. I also thought it was weird to see, I feel like they should have populated this film with obscure actors or foreign actors or something, like, because I found it weird to see like familiar American faces like John Goodman in a silent film, because every time like he opens his mouth, I'm like sort of expecting to hear his voice, like I'm projecting his voice into my mind. It's kind of weird. I'm imagining him in like Big Lebowski or something when he's doing in the silent film. So I feel like it would have been better if they went with unknowns. Ross, is that something you felt seeing people like John Goodman, James Cromwell? You've probably seen his face in some stuff as well. Like seeing them in a silent film is almost like distracting because you know they're of a different era, whereas the other guys, like obviously the main guy, he's from Wolf of Wall Street, but you might not necessarily recognize, like this is obviously before Wolf of Wall Street, you might not recognize him immediately, and he's not that famous outside of those two films. But in terms of the other like American faces, do you think it would have been better to just have unknowns so you can just associate them with the silent era?
Yeah, I think it is, especially with John Goodman as well, because he does have such a distinctive voice. You can hear that anyone can hear John Goodman's voice when he opens his mouth. I think that is an issue. I think they're put there to kind of sell the film a bit more, because if it was just like, oh, it's a silent film, people can be like, but if the studios like can advertise and be like, oh, it's got John Goodman in it, and then I think that it's more of a selling point than anything else. But and maybe it's like a cliched thing that they've done to put kind of like an iconic voice within Hollywood into a silent film. It's probably something like that why they've done it. But yeah, I liked it. It was better than I thought it was going to be, I think. And I am quite impressed in how they managed to get emotion across through silent film. And I quite like the scene where the stuff in his room starts making noises and he's just sitting there and he can't talk. I quite like that. And I think we've all kind of touched on it, how it is very it's niche, and you wouldn't necessarily like it as much if you didn't like kind of cinema, and this wouldn't appeal to a large audience, I think. So but I can see why it won Best Picture that year, because it's not exactly the strongest year in general with the films that were nominated as well. So and yeah, and obviously the soundtrack is very nice, old style of music and the orchestra and stuff. It is really cool, that. And there are a couple good bits in the film as well, like when they go to the cinema, there's barely anyone there, and then his character's going through the quicksand in the film. I quite like that bit as well. But in general, I think there's a reason in the 21st century silent films don't exist anymore. But it is like a love letter to Hollywood, and you have to be, I think, it's a niche audience that would like this, that do love cinema and appreciate that. And I think maybe we're too young or something to appreciate it as much. I don't know, but yeah, it's a weird one.
I thought there was a bit of Star is Born elements, Mason. The idea, like having like a fading male star and then like his like rising female counterpart, and how that kind of impacts their relationship and like the tension there. I thought, as I was watching, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the classic Star is Born story. Is that something that you felt watching it?
Yeah, to be fair, I didn't think about it until you said it, but yeah, now you said it, I'm literally like, I'm like rewinding the whole film in my head right now, and I'm like, yeah, it's the same formula, like you said. He meets like this young girl who's like trying to break out on the scene. He kind of helps her get into the industry. She overtakes him. Yeah, it's basically, like you said, the exact same film, really. Well, not the exact same film, but then to be fair, he does try to like off himself at the end, so I guess it is pretty similar. Yeah, like Ross said, I think there is a reason why these films don't exist anymore, but I think having this like one-off experience, as Leon said, in such like a higher quality compared to the films made in the 1920s, it was an enjoyable experience, and it was unique, and that's what I do appreciate. That's what I appreciate about this film, and I think that's why it got such hype at the Oscars and it won so much, because it offers that experience to generations of new film watchers who could never have, probably not alive, who saw like silent films back in the day. So for that itself, I think it's definitely a film that I'll probably remember for a while, because it has that uniqueness to it. Well, not even uniqueness, it's just that nod to history, but allowing us to experience it in like a fresher way.
I feel like the overriding thing with me with this film is like, I kind of like stuff, but kind of don't like it at the same time within the film. Like even the thing with him at the end, like him nearly dying at the end, like that's kind of both like, it feels like cheesy but poetic at the same time, because it's like the movies nearly killed him in the sense that he lost his career, and that's what saw him like spiral out of control. And literally the movies nearly killed him because it was the nitrate film that caught light and they nearly burned him alive. And then like he's seen that afterwards, he's like clasping the like the film reel with him and his girl acting on it. So yeah, like, I like that at the same time as not liking it. It's kind of like a bit cheesy and a bit sentimental, but at the same time, it's kind of nice at the same time. I feel like it's just the prevailing thing with me with this film. It's like, yeah, it's kind of good, and then I kind of don't like it, and it's a bit wishy-washy. But overall, it's a interesting experience to see a silent film made in the 21st century. Glad got to watch it. Also, he definitely shouldn't have won Best Actor. Like, it wasn't like a good year, but like, you can't give Best Actor to someone who doesn't have to speak in the film, I don't think. I think that's pushing it a bit. Like, Brad Pitt should have won this year for Moneyball. Like, it was an amazing year, but that's a better performance. Like, yeah. Anyone disagree with that? May?
I don't know, because it feels a bit weird. Because then people say Scarlett Johansson in Her didn't get an Oscar nod because she wasn't in it because it was just voice acting. And then that also opens like Andy Serkis for any of his CGI performances wouldn't get any nods because he isn't necessarily in the film. But yeah, like if the performance is good enough alone, then yeah. I'm not saying necessarily is in this case, but I think if the performance alone is good enough for the performance that it is, if you manage to get so much across using only his body language and facial expressions rather than voice, I think, and he does that better than someone who is using everything to pull off a less convincing performance, then he should get it. But I wouldn't say as a general because he's not using his voice, he shouldn't get it. If that makes any sense, because he's acting within the scope that the film allows him to, and it kind of opens it up to too many things. I just think if the performance is worthy, it's worthy. But yeah, I agree that I don't think this performance would have really outshone Brad Pitt's performance, because I do prefer Moneyball. Moneyball is a solid film for me, even though it is a film, technically it's more boring because a lot less happens. But I still just find it more interesting.
Okay, let's get some ratings. Start with Mason.
I really enjoyed it, to be fair, so I gave it an 8.1.
Ross.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It was definitely better than I thought it was going to be, so I'll go with an 8.
Matty.
This is a difficult one for me because I agree with what Mason's saying. As like a one-off experience, it works, but it's not something that I would watch again. I appreciated the film as I watched it, but I didn't necessarily enjoy the film. So I'll probably give it, say, a 7.8 because I appreciate the way it was made and I do enjoy like it capturing a part of history.
I'll also give it a 7.8. Final film, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou from 2004. With a plan to exact revenge on a mythical shark that killed his partner, oceanographer Steve Zissou rallies a crew that includes his estranged wife, a journalist, and a man who may or may not be his son. Directed by Wes Anderson, who co-wrote the screenplay with Noah Baumbach, starring Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, Cate Blanchett, Angelica Houston, Willem Dafoe, and quite a few other famous faces in there. Ross picked this film, so go ahead, Ross.
So I picked this film because I really like Wes Anderson and his aesthetic, and same with Bill Murray. I really like Bill Murray. I like Groundhog Day, Lost in Translation, etc. So I thought this could go in. Well, he's in a lot of his films, but yeah, this was quite like a good option for this week because I hadn't seen it before. And I didn't realize going into this film the ensemble that it had, like with Owen Wilson, Cate Blanchett, Jeff Goldblum, Willem Dafoe, Michael Gambon, obviously Bill Murray, plus a few others. And I don't think anyone disappoints acting wise. I think everyone's really good in it. And I think this is a really good role and performance for Bill Murray. I think he brought the right amount of like bluntness and comedy into the film, whilst also keeping it like interesting and funny, and basically playing an aging man whose career is going downhill, and you root for him. Yet he's a bit of a dick sometimes, yet you still like him, kind of thing. He does really well at that. Yeah, and I mean, as always with Wes Anderson films, it is very visually nice. I think this film, maybe not as stunning as a lot of his other films. I think as like an auteur, he's very, you always see like a certain color palette with him, a lot of symmetrical shots, that kind of stuff, are very visually stunning. And I think this one feels a lot less like a Wes Anderson film than any other Wes Anderson film. Like you watch Grand Budapest, you watch Royal Tenenbaums, you watch Fantastic Mr. Fox, and it feels like you're watching Wes Anderson, but this one doesn't really. In terms of like scripts and stuff, it does. I mean, it's very witty. It doesn't really fall flat on the comedy too much. It's I really like Willem Dafoe's character. He's really funny in it. And it's got kind of the claymation fish out the window and stuff. I quite like how that's put in there. Only thing is, I think you can tell this is the first time Wes Anderson was given like a big budget for a film, because it's got like gunfights and action sequences in it stuff, and you don't really see that within his films much. And I can't tell whether I actually like it or not. It's it's quite. I don't know whether it's just there because he had this budget and he thought like, fuck it, let's do it. But it's also kind of, they kind of make it funny at the same time because it is kind of stupid and wacky. And like Bill Murray getting out in his dressing gown and killing like a whole crew, like a whole ship of pirates, is quite funny at the same time. And yeah, I mean, it's quite a good film emotion wise as well. I like the scene in the submarine, obviously after Ned dies, Owen Wilson's character, and the emotion with that is quite sad. And then yeah, the submarine scene I think was really like mesmerizing with everyone in there. Kind of he saw the shock, let it be. He accepted what happened, and everyone put their hand on his shoulder. It could be a little bit cringy in some people's eyes, but I quite liked it. And yeah, so a lot of it could be seen as quite like cringy, maybe, but I quite liked it, and I thought it was actually quite emotional. And at the end, it's quite heartwarming as well. And yeah, as I say, in terms of aesthetic and the film, the way it looks and stuff, it doesn't feel like I'm watching a Wes Anderson film. And I think that kind of disappointed me in that sense going into it, because I was expecting it to be very visually stunning and whatnot. And it doesn't look bad. I quite like the way they move through the set of the ship and stuff. I quite like that kind of thing. But in general, I didn't get the kind of Wes Anderson feel that I usually would, or you usually would going into a Wes Anderson film. But yeah, it's witty, it's funny, it's emotional. Yeah, so I liked it in that sense.
Yeah, I kind of agree that it's like, it's almost, yeah, it's not Wes Anderson-y enough. That's kind of his like big selling. I feel like people either don't like his films or they do. A lot of people criticize him for not having like enough. The style that he has, that kind of whimsical style, doesn't like lend itself to having like actual like emotional depth, which I don't agree with. Like Royal Tenenbaums is one of the most like emotionally complex and layered films of the last like 20 years. So I don't agree with that. But I feel like you either like the Wes Anderson shtick or you don't. And in this film, there's just like it's just not enough of it. I thought you wanted it to be a bit more creative, and like Ross says, with the camera work and all that kind of stuff. Like I agree with him as well. Like the there is certain bits like when he does explore the ship, that one scene where it's going through every single room. I really enjoyed that scene. It's really funny. And then also when I think Owen Wilson's chasing after him, or he's chasing after Owen Wilson, and they're kind of journeying through the ship, and the camera's moving through all the different rooms. Like that's another example where, yeah, his direction really comes through in a strong way. Overall, yeah, you just kind of wanted a bit more of it. But I think it is an easy film to enjoy, even if there's not like a tremendous amount you're like interested in. It's just like a nice tale of like a man, or not nice, that's kind of deep, but like an enjoyable tale of a man and like his crew and their like adventures at sea. Like I feel like movies at sea are always kind of a vibe, and this kind of putting a movie at sea with this kind of Wes Anderson whimsy kind of works for me overall. And it was enjoyable to see the different characters, how they engage with each other. I enjoyed Cate Blanchett in this film, her like kind of spirited performance. But yeah, it just wasn't as like consistently funny, or you just wanted a bit more. You just wanted more of Wes Anderson's style to come through. Mason, is that something you felt? Are you a fan of Wes Anderson's other stuff that you've seen?
I think I'm like a bit of a fake. I feel like I always gas up Wes Anderson. I checked. I don't think I've seen any of his films. I think it's the first one that I've seen. So, so I even wrote on my notes, it feels like a Wes Anderson film, but I don't know because it's the only Wes Anderson film that I've seen. And after you two saying that, I crossed it out. I was like, oh, maybe it's not. But I felt like I felt like it had this like unique style that I've heard that he has. And I felt like I did experience that in this film. So I can't really comment, as you two say, that it was a bit like held back, or it wasn't as much as you wanted, because for me, it felt unique and I felt like I had experienced a Wes Anderson film. I found it probably the easiest watch out of the three films that we did watch this week. And like I said, I think it lacks a bit of emotion due to its style. I think I experienced that. But then equally, the scenes when it does try to show you emotion, it does it effectively. Like it has that comedic style going throughout, and then when it balances it out with sort of the emotional sides, it does work. But yeah, for like my first experience of a Wes Anderson film, I really enjoyed it, and I think for me to me, I thought it would like prepare me for the French Dispatch when that comes out this year. But I guess if you lot are saying that he should be like 10 times more Wes Anderson-y in his other films, then I guess maybe I'll probably be a bit more shocked still, because for the first 10 minutes of this film, it took me a while to get into the style and kind of like buy into it. But then once I did, I think I appreciated the film a lot more. That's why in my head, like the first 10 minutes of the film are quite weak, but they're probably not. It's just because it wasn't what I was expecting.
I agree with Ross that it was a really good Bill Murray performance. I find it interesting that Bill Murray's kind of attached himself to Wes Anderson. I don't really know what he saw in him early on to think like, yeah, I'm going to be. He's pretty much I think he's in every film he's done. I'm pretty sure, like all the ones I've seen, he's in. He's in both animated films he's done. He's in. He's got a part in the French Dispatch. So he's kind of like, yeah, but always I'm gonna ride for this guy the whole second half of my career. And I think what he does get in Wes Anderson films, like he balances perfectly. That kind of like he's always funny, but there's always like a hint of like sadness behind every line that he says. I find, and even like you have that in Tenenbaums. He's not as funny in Tenenbaums, but in Rushmore as well, where like he's kind of amusing, and you see like what Bill Murray was known for, like when he's in like the wacky comedies, but there's also that hint of sadness behind everything he's doing, and that's understandable in this film. Like, I thought there was a good amount of emotion, like decent amount, in terms of him being like a revered filmmaker who's kind of lost his way, and like, but he's still got people who kind of believe in him and like are devoted to following him. Like, you got the funny stuff with like the interns and that kind of thing, like people who are still like devoted to like his genius and will follow him anywhere to go on these adventures because they believe that he's still a special talent. I feel like it captures like the pressure you must feel if you're like a really skilled, like Wes Anderson might even be thinking about this, like this, because obviously this film flopped to the box office after he had a lot of success with Tenenbaum, got nominated for an Oscar. Like the kind of pressure when you burst onto the scene and you're like this new, like fresh, creative voice, the pressure to like sustain that in all your like future stuff. I feel like that this film captures that. Like he's done a lot of really good ocean documentaries, wherever it is, that's brought him success early in his career, and now he's struggling to get that back. And people are like, "What are you doing? You're like washed up now." So you can tell that he's like kind of sorrowful at the whole journey he's gone on. Like now that he's not as revered as he was previously when he's making these successful films, it's like, what does he have to show for his life? Like, I like that quote when I can't remember what it is, but he's kind of like, "Well, do you think they recognize me or they remember me?" He says that to like the sharks or something. Because like I've devoted all my life to these creatures. Do they even know who I am now that I'm washed up and I'm not making successful films anymore? Do these creatures that I've dedicated my life to even know who I am? It's kind of like, well, what have I done? What have I done this all for? What have I got left? What's my like legacy? That's why he probably wanted to bond with his son. So yeah, it's really a strong performance by Bill Murray. Matty, do you like Bill Murray when he's in this mode where he's still got the humor, but you've got the dramatic stuff going on with him, not like his stuff in Ghostbusters when he's just an outright brash, funny dickhead almost. Here you've got kind of a dick, but a funny dick throughout.
Yeah, literally my first note is on Bill Murray's mannerisms, and kind of like it's not as much as the effortless confidence and sarcasm and like highly functioning person that we usually see, like we see in Groundhog and Ghostbusters and this kind of thing. I want to see more of this. In this film, he's more relaxed in all of that, but he doesn't quite make up for it in any other aspects. Like there's less of the sarcasm, the confidence, and all of this that we used to seeing, and maybe he taps into being a little bit more emotional, but no more emotional than he is in his other films anyway. So maybe I just didn't pick up on that. So I just find it kind of less enthralling, and with the cinematography as well with Wes Anderson, I'm expecting like this strong alternative style like we see with like Grand Budapest Hotel, where there's these big 90-degree pans or 180-degree pans, and they're fast and everything's like perpendicular and everything's like framed. With this film, it's like there's like an echo of that. Like everything's almost framed to be, but it's just not quite as crisp. It's just not quite as like followed through. And it just doesn't feel like what I'm used to from his films. Like it's further away from normal cinema, that they don't do the close-ups and they don't do like the slow pan shots, and they don't do kind of like the close conversational things as much, so you lose that, but it doesn't go further enough to fully become his style, whether he hasn't developed it properly yet. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the stuff previous to this film. I've only seen the stuff afterwards. So maybe this is what we needed to then jump to things like Grand Budapest Hotel. The things I do like are like the model of the ship that they used to like explain all of this, all the areas, and it's got this cross-sectional approach. I quite like that. And I kind of like the coldness and kind of that, not quite slapstick, but the cold silentness of like when he just punches him and he just punches him back, and then the fight scenes as well, in terms of like shooting each other with the pirates. That kind of feels almost like either like a video game or like a dream. Like no one's hitting anyone really, and even when they do get hit, they're kind of fine. Like Jeff Goldblum getting shot basically just through the lower chest, and then just like being laid out, and then like just getting up and carrying on, and he's fine. It kind of feels like no one's getting shot because no one's allowed to die. It feels like a video game that you haven't reached the right cutscene to, which is interesting because it's just not what we're used to with normal kind of like fight scenes. Like they shot like one person pretty much. Like he'll shoot directly at someone, they won't go down, and he'll carry on moving through just past him, and that dude's still there shooting at him, and they're just shooting at each other, and no one's getting hit. It's different. I don't not like it. It's just different. Lots of different actors in this film as well that I quite like. Kate Blanchett as well in this film is almost unrecognizable, not because they've made her up in any way, just because she's just acting quite differently, which is nice. Like the accent's very good, and the mannerisms are all changed as well. Willem Dafoe as well. I enjoy seeing him in this film. I wish they give him a bit more scope to be weird, and be strange. Like he could be really eccentric in this, and he already is with like the way he like misunderstands things. When he says cross this line if you're against me, so he crosses the line. He goes, so you're against me? He goes, wait, no, I think I've misunderstood. Just do it again. That whole scene I really like. I wish they just gave more to this, to him being either dramatic or crazy, because he really does excel in the previous films we've seen. I didn't like how the pirates put a pregnant lady on her front. That's not good for the baby. I didn't like that at all. Like that's really quite dangerous. The helicopter crash I really liked, how the kind of the engine just cuts out and you're just looking down and you're just falling, and it's just silence. That worked really well. It kind of reminds you when you're on a roller coaster, you're just silently falling. I really like that. But the film as a whole, it kind of just felt loose. Like there was a plot. The plot is to go find this shark or whatever. But it just kind of like felt loose and like easily distracted and not focused enough. For me, kind of like, I don't know, it felt like a car journey that was just taking too long, if that makes any sense. Like it shouldn't, I don't know, it didn't really captivate me enough. And I didn't really enjoy the film. Like it just kind of like took too long to do what it was trying to do. And I know part of the journey is what it's aiming to do. It's not actually the destination. Like when they did get there to the shark, I really did like the kind of the fulfillment, and like the progression of Bill Murray's character through there, and kind of the realization. It's almost like he's just been grieving the whole time because his friends died, and that's what the film's been about, and he hasn't quite processed that. So that actually is quite fulfilling. I think it's just through the middle of the film, I kind of got not lost, but just like a bit nonplussed by it. But yeah, I enjoy the film. It's not. I'm glad he did it so he could build on to do other films. He could see where he needs to focus some of his attention. And I can see why it didn't do as well as his other films, because it just doesn't have that same kind of clarity or like finesse.
It was meant to be a parody and a homage to Jacques Cousteau, who I'd never heard of. I've heard of the name, but I don't really follow. He's an oceanographer, obviously. I don't really follow oceanography. You'll be surprised to know. So like, apparently he was quite famous. So this was like a tribute to him and like parodying his style. So I guess that might, if you're more familiar with him, same with Man on the Moon with Andy Kaufman, like how that could, if we had known who he was, how that might have influenced how we perceived that film. Same thing here. Like if I knew who Jacques Cousteau was and what he was like, you'd be watching this in a different way. When in reality, I was just watching it as this is just Bill Murray. This is a character created by Wes Anderson, Noah Baumbach, and Bill Murray. So I guess, yeah, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that guy and if that affected your viewing. I doubt it. Surprisingly, no. Okay.
I just remember on Friends when Phoebe shouts, "I love Jacques Cousteau," and that's the one that I know of him.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That completely changes how I perceive the film now. Okay. Let's get some ratings. Start with Ross.
It's quite an awkward one to rate, I think, because there are very good elements of the film. Like it is funny. Bill Murray is really good in it. But then story-wise, as Matty said, kind of does fall flat. And maybe in the middle it is kind of draggy. So it's really hard to just like stick a rating on this. But I think I'll go with a 7.7.
Mason?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, and I think it was an easy watch. And it was visually quite like pleasing and stuff. So I gave it a 7.4.
Matty?
For me as a film, I think it kind of just fell flat for me, so I gave it a 6.9.
I'll give it a 7.4. And now, Ross will announce the ratings for this week and all weeks combined averages. Ross.
All right then. So in third place this week with a 7.4, we have The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. In second place, we've got Tropic Thunder, also a 7.4. But then in first place with The Artist with 7.9. In terms of overall ranking, that puts Tropic Thunder and Life Aquatic at 81st and 82nd overall, between our Christmas films, Elf and Love Actually. Then The Artist further up in 54th between American Psycho and Before Sunset. So I think, as we expected, our Best Picture winner is a bit higher up. I don't personally think it's as good as American Psycho or Before Sunset, but we move.
Thank you very much, Ross. Okay, let's do Actor of the Week. Matty.
Actor of the Week. I haven't actually thought about this one. I'd probably have to give it to Robert Downey Jr. just for having like the balls to accept that part. I don't think many actors would have even attempted to do that film or to do it with like the kind of the confidence that he did. And I'm yet to see anyone try and play a similar role as confidently that could be so controversial. Yeah.
Mason.
I went for Bill Murray. I think this week it's not probably the best acting, especially when you're trying to compare a comedy to a silent film to a Wes Anderson film. But I think Bill Murray probably has the strongest performance out of all of them. It kind of shines through, I think, compared to the rest.
Ross.
Yeah, I also went with Bill Murray. I think he's kind of the master of, or at least he's very good at doing these roles where he's funny, yet it's dramatic and there's emotion there. He does it in Groundhog Day, he does it in many other films, and I think he does it again here, and that's why he shines through. So yeah, Bill Murray.
Yeah, Bill Murray. Dry humor, emotion, bit of sarcasm, bit of a dick, bit of emotional issues that he had to overcome. Just a really solid performance from him in there. The unique category would be the movie you would most like to see within these three movies. So they're obviously making films within these films, since it is the week movies by movies. So what movie would you like to see from either Tropic Thunder, The Artist, or The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou? Mason.
I think if I was actually going to go to the cinema and enjoy one of these films the most, it probably would be Tropic Thunder, even though I actually dislike the film itself. I think the film it would have produced would be probably the more watchable one that I'd actually, want to go see compared to the other two.
Ross.
I think I'll go with Life Aquatic. I think within the film you would have like kind of them breaking into Jeff Goldblum's little place, and the Owen Wilson when he died, it'd be like an actual person dying and stuff. So it would be more emotional, I think. And just imagine like watching a real life film where someone in their dressing gown just kind of kills a load of pirates and shit. Yeah, I think I'll go with Life Aquatic.
Matty?
I think I'll go with Tropic Thunder just because I don't think it'd be a good film. I just want to see what a mess they would have been able to make out of what footage they had. I think it just would have been funny to see.
I'll go with that film in Tropic Thunder with starring Kirk Lazarus and Tobey Maguire. It looked like I can't remember what it was called. It was just really funny. It was a really funny parody. And it's like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but with two guys, and I think it was religious. I don't know. It looked funny, like a vibe. Probably win Best Picture. Okay, I wish this was a pop final award. Ross.
There already a Steve Zissou pop. I quite like the Little Red Hats. But there's already one, so we can't go with that. So I think I would maybe go with Jack Black in Tropic Thunder. It just looked quite funny. With his like blonde hair and quite a large man. Yeah, it just looked quite funny, I think. And maybe him like going in as well. That would be quite funny.
I want Tom Cruise as Les Grossman from Tropic Thunder with his big hands and his balding head, all that stuff. I think I said already that we don't have there's no Tom Cruise pop vinyl for anything that he's done. I think I said that on one of the Tom Cruise episodes we've done. We're doing another Tom Cruise film next week. But yeah, he's got nothing. So yeah, why not do this one? It's the most like animated he's ever looked. That is the end. At Leon Wait 98, Corona Cinema Podcast at WordPress.com, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean. Next fortnight, it's drive-in movies. Baby Driver, 2-Lane Blacktop, Collateral. Until then, go well.
Safe.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Stop. Mute.
Stop burning my possessions.